last week, the homework you were given, very end of the video, the homework you were given was to just take note of how you feel after you eat. And part of the reason I wanted you to do that is so that when we came into this discussion, you kind of had an idea of the foods that helped you feel happier, maybe made you a little bit more grumpy or sad or just anxious. Any of those emotions, if they popped up for you while you're eating, it kind of indicates things that you're eating that your body may have either not gotten enough of at that moment or gotten too much of. One of the two. Usually when you are grumpy, depressed, sad, things like that, it's an indicator that your body is still missing micronutrients it needs. Specific micronutrients that actually are pretty common in the American diet right now because of processed foods, etc. Zinc, B12, B6, omegas, your calcium, potassium, magnesium, A, D, E, C, K can be pretty deficient. The big thing with K is vitamin K helps you actually metabolize and get vitamin D into a usable form. So if you're deficient in vitamin D, the chances that you're deficient in vitamin K as well are pretty high. Fiber. Now, this is one that kind of goes without saying, but you know, if you're stopped up or you can't go, then you're not going to be happy. And today's live is all about our mood, our health, and our emotions, and how the food that we eat can actually impact our emotions and can either help us feel happier and more positive about life, or it can shift in the other direction. If you're someone who fights or manages, because some of us fight, some of us manage, mental health illnesses, they can actually improve with diet. Meaning your depression is not as severe. If it is a mental health issue, it will always be a mental health issue. It's merely another chronic illness that you have to manage for life. And so many of us now have some sort of an illness or an issue or sensitivity or something that we have to deal with every single day. It just is what it is. It's part of that bioidentical or bioindividuality that we touched on last week. Every one of us needs something specific because every one of us is either deficient in something or we're fighting some sort of illness that requires us to have a certain micronutrient and maybe an excess of that micronutrient in comparison to somebody else, right? That's not to say that you need to go out and, buy up all the foods I'm going to talk about today. That's not what these videos are all about. That's not what these talks are about. Anybody you listen to, myself or somebody else, what you want to do is you want to take the nuggets that apply to you and you want to incorporate them into your life. Now, what I mean by that in relation to food is this. If I give you a list of foods, which I've got a list written down here, you guys know me and my notes. I want to make sure that there are certain things that I say, right? So I got my notes ready, already here, and in these notes is a list of foods that I'm going to talk about. When I go through this list, and when I talk about foods, I want you to think about the foods that you have in your house, the foods that you eat a lot of. Because 9 times out of 10, when I give somebody a list of foods, more than half of the items on my list are foods that either they enjoy a lot and just don't eat very often for whatever reason, or they eat often and they never realize how helpful the food is. It's one of the two. And that's the biggest reason why when I give you these lists and we talk about these things, I want you to really just listen for the things that apply to you. The things that resonate with you will get into your brain and they will kind of soak in, and your brain will connect to it and go, oh, we have to do this, or we have to do more of that. And that's ultimately the best part about this, is because, well, it starts with just an idea, just a thought. Your words become thoughts, your thoughts become action. Because your brain hears those thoughts and considers them instructions, effectively, right? So, I'm a little late in my coffee today. That's the biggest reason why our mood is affected by the food that we eat. Now, how does this happen? Well, the biggest reason is through hormone function. So our hormones need certain ingredients and certain micronutrients to actually produce the hormone, or our glands. Let me back up. Our glands and our organs need certain micronutrients to produce the molecules that our body needs, right? The usable forms for our body to function, right? To do its job. Each organ, each gland requires different ones. Some of them require the same things, and it just gets split up. But for the most part, each organ and gland requires certain micronutrients, and those micronutrients help that gland or that organ do its job. For hormones, the glands that produce hormones are our chemical messengers, okay? They deliver instructions, they deliver product, for lack of a better word. They deliver product to whatever place it is that needs it to function. So for your immune system to operate effectively, the adrenal system needs to release cortisol, right? And endorphins, and it has to create this balance within your system. But how does your adrenal system get its signals? So what we talked about last week, the HPA axis, right? The vagus nerve and the HPA axis. So that communication platform transports hormones, once they are in an absorbable, usable form, around the body, right? Distributes, tells it where to go. And when you're not given enough micronutrients, then your body has to manufacture them. But as we know with processed foods, when you manufacture food, it does not equate to a healthy source, right? A McDonald's burger is processed. God knows what's in the thing, okay? I'm not knocking you if you like McDonald's. I'm using it as an example. That's it. I don't know what's in a McDonald's burger. I know there's meat in it, and I know there's preservatives. Now, the preservatives can modify that food so that now it's a manufactured hamburger. Does it have some of the things that make a natural all-American hamburger a hamburger? Yeah. But it's the manufactured piece that is the problem. Works the same exact way inside our internal ecosystem. When you manufacture a B vitamin, just as an example, B vitamins are energy, right? If you need energy and you're depleted and you're just fatigued and you can't boost up, a little bit of B12, what happens? Same thing as a caffeine rush. You're bouncing off the walls, right? So what happens if the B vitamin comes from an unnatural source, comes from a manufactured source? Your response is not as good. It doesn't last as long. It is not effective because your B vitamin has now been absorbed and washed through. A lot quicker than a natural source of B vitamins. So having the salad, dark chocolate, cruciferous foods, things like that. Fruit's actually really refreshing and a great way to get B vitamins. So getting these vitamins in without forcing your body to manufacture the things that it is low in really helps, especially because when your hormones are trying to manufacture things, guess what goes away? Your mood. Your brain can't be happy if it's focused on something else. I mean, what happens when you're stressed or working on a project, last minute deadline, there's all sorts of stuff going on around you, and someone's asking you questions. You're just going to answer real quick. You're not going to give the happy-go-lucky answer because you're not feeling happy-go-lucky. You're feeling stressed. You're feeling anxious. You need to get this stuff done. Leave me alone. Let me do my job. That is what your brain is saying. Whenever you're feeling grumpy, angry, you have a gloomy Eeyore day, and there isn't a reason for it. If you're grieving a loved one, you are going to have down moments and up moments. Food can help, exercise can help, releasing those endorphins actually does help you in your grieving process. However, there are going to be moments in time when grieving is just going to be grieving. And if you allow yourself to feel and to release those emotions, then it's easier to come back to positive and happy, and those feelings of contentment, serenity, peacefulness, everything that we associate with being positive. It's not necessarily that I expect you to be, Little Miss Sally Sunshine for the rest of your life, because guess what? That's not reality. But there are implications when you're negative. Negative moods, when you're grumpy, when you're sad, when you're anxious, depressed, it impacts your health. Okay? Our immune system is directly attached to our emotions. So when you are sad, when you're grumpy, your body's moving sluggish. A lot of times this indicates that your body is overworking itself, either because of a micronutrient deficit, which 9 times out of 10 nowadays that's exactly what's happening, is our body is just simply not being fueled the way that it needs to be. It is the sole reason I have a job, you guys, because that right there, that is my job. My job is to help you figure out how to fuel your body properly, regardless of what is happening in your world. And once you discover that, once you figure out some pathways and some habits and strategies to get there, it is relatively easy to just manage for life no matter what the world throws at you. COVID, your world falls apart because of a loss of a job, a loss of a loved one, something unexpected happened, hurricane hits the town that you're in, whatever the case may be, you can manage, you can deal, you can adjust. Because you know what your body needs, you know bare minimums, you know what you're going to have to do to survive that time frame, and then move forward back into whole health, right? Whatever whole health means for you. Your immune system is governed by your HPA axis. We talked about this last week. HPA, vagus, all of that, right? Your immune system is fueled by it. Your immune system is basically directed because your HPA axis is how your adrenal glands receive their signals. It's how they're told what to do. Our immune system lives in our gut. Gut, adrenal, it's all intertwined. We've talked about this, in past videos, so I don't want to reiterate something that I've already shoved down your throat multiple times. But your HPA connection, and for those of you who haven't seen that video, it's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Your vagus nerve is on one side, your HPA axis is on the other. They talk to each other. And those signals, the vagus nerve is actually responsible for bringing everything in and distributing and channeling communication between your gut and your brain. so that your gut knows what your brain needs, or your brain knows what your gut needs, and your brain can communicate back to your gut that, hey, we haven't had this, and this, and you've asked me for these nutrients. So I need you to send hunger signals and cravings for this. So they work together, and then cravings are sent out, and voila, right? Mood is just another signal. Our emotions, our mental health, the state of our mood and feeling about ourselves in the world in this moment in time is totally wrapped up in that communication pathway. It's wrapped up in the food that we eat. Now, little known fact that the brain actually contains immune cells. So when your immune system is overwhelmed, what happens is they will actually send in the reserves. The reserves are the immune cells that live in your brain. There are two types, M1, M2. M1 triggers inflammation. If they are sent out because for whatever reason your body is overwhelmed, then they are actually using manufactured micronutrients, because what that indicates is that your body has been depleted. Now, if that happens, you are one grumpy ass person. You are grumpy. You know how we call people Karens nowadays? 9 times out of 10, they just need to eat. I mean, it is that simple. They need to eat, and for whatever reason, they have not eaten the foods that their bodies need. And now, here they are. Too much time on their hands, and they're just going to be super critical and pay attention to everything else and nitpick. And have you ever noticed that when you get grumpy and sad, that sometimes you get into those bitchy modes where you're just like, you're nitpicking everything, yourself, other people. It just is what it is. You know, it's the way that it is. And if you understand what's happening, then there's a way that you can go back and actually fix it. So how do we fix this with food? How do we fix our mood with food? Well, our hormones are each attached to emotions. All right. So once we understand where each of these emotions live, then we can understand what we need to support, right? If there are any herbals that we need to add in. And if you're new here, herbals does not mean CBD. Herbals mean herbal medicine. It can mean things that you put in your food, things that you drink, things that you eat, tea, capsules, whatever. All right, so I wrote these down because I wanted to make sure I got them correct. So happiness, harmony, peace, serenity, that's in our thyroid. If you are struggling to get happy, if you're struggling to maintain happiness and everything else around you indicates that you should be happy, then you need to really look at your thyroid levels. A couple of other signals, since we're on the topic. You see this? Your hair loss, right? Up in here. My thyroid has been very low. You guys know I tested a couple months ago, so I have been on some supplements. I've been watching some of the things that I eat, making sure I get certain nutrients in each day. 2 key points with thyroid and happiness: vitamin D deficiency and stress. So 2 indicators of things that, or not 2 indicators, 2 elements that you can actually consume that will help in raising your happiness level, alleviating some of the thyroid deficiencies that's happening, because when your thyroid doesn't have what it needs and it can't produce its hormones, it's not going to do this. You're going to struggle to maintain happiness. You're going to struggle to just be happy. You know, feel at peace, feel serene and balanced. And health is just all about balance. It is about homeostasis, balance. Ooh, there we go. I think that's right. Yeah. Right. So ashwagandha is an herb. You can get it in a tea if you want. There's a ton of capsules, gummies, things like that out. Vitamin D, dark leafy greens, dark chocolate. Let me see. Omegas, mushrooms. I think. Hold on. I don't think mushrooms have. Yeah, mushrooms have vitamin D. I don't like mushrooms, but we'll get there. We'll get to the food. All right. So cortisol is all about your stress response. So that's where you get anxiety, sometimes depression. Some bipolar conditions can live in your adrenal glands and your kidneys. Your kidneys actually produce the cortisol that goes through the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands go, oh, okay, we need it now. Boop, sends it out. Oxytocin. You guys, have you heard about oxytocin? I am laughing because for a while there it was like this fad that, you have to you have to watch your oxytocin, and that's going to be the health barometer for everybody is your oxytocin, and you need to watch it. It is a core element. It is a core hormone. Depression, sadness, but specifically a lack of empathy, where someone's talking to you and logically you should be a little bit more I don't want to say easygoing, but you shouldn't be as harsh in the discussion with that person. Like, they just need someone to talk to. That normally would be you, but for whatever reason in that moment in time, it's not working for you, right? You're not able to just take a step back, be empathetic, be compassionate in your discussions with that person. If that happens, oxytocin is an issue. These are all wrapped up in potassium, magnesium, vitamin D, zinc, why am I blanking? Fiber, potassium, choline, calcium, and omega-3s. So omega-3s, potassium, magnesium, zinc, those are key elements, you guys, especially nowadays with COVID. Oxytocin is specifically associated with relationships, right? Relationships with other people, relationships with yourself, interactions, human-to-human interactions. That's all wrapped up in your oxytocin. If that is not an enjoyable experience for you, not because of trauma, difference. If it is not an enjoyable experience for you, then that means there's something lacking in your diet, in your foundation, okay? Diet and food is just foundation. That's it. It's the foundation of health. That's why dietitians and nutritionists even have a job. We don't diagnose. We don't, nutritionists don't prescribe. Dietitians are able to prescribe, and prescribe foods and diets, and that's it. But the whole reason we even have a job is to help people figure out what holes they're missing and what cracks have been created in their foundation. That foundation, once it is stable, once it is solid, will bring out a diagnosis so fast, you guys. If you're struggling to get a diagnosis, if you're struggling to figure out what is happening with your body, and especially if you've been sick for a while, you've been suffering from pain, but you don't know a root cause, taking your diet and lifestyle and creating something that is manageable, that's doable, that is significantly healthier than where you're at currently, can bring out and bring to light conditions and illnesses that previously were hidden behind responses like these, behind your mood, behind just your body trying to manufacture what it needs. That masks so many things. Our brain is so protective of us, a little too much sometimes, but it really is. So when you're looking at oxytocin, it's, that lack of empathy is something that you can really pay attention to. And a lot of times people will see it in relationships. They really acknowledge an issue in diet and lifestyle when they realize that there's a disconnect in their relationships, whether it's one or it's multiple, but they see a disconnect in relationships. And that's where they identify, okay, this is where there's an issue. Something's happening because this is not how I normally interact with people. All right, so moving on. Melatonin. Sleep. You don't get enough sleep. Your memory is crap. Your attention is crap. Those of us with ADHD have issues, major issues with sleep and actually being able to focus, right? We can hyper focus. That's what we're really good at. But if we're tired and sleep deprived, that's not going to happen. So melatonin is what helps us sleep. That's why if you're having issues with sleep, the very first thing someone suggests is melatonin. Something else I will suggest is having something that is a little unorthodox. Coffee is a stimulant, right? Chocolate contains certain ingredients that mimic the stimulants in coffee. Chocolate wakes you up. Some sort of warm beverage will help put you to sleep. Tea, hot cocoa is something that I usually recommend to people. Sorry, guys. Tickle. It's like someone said, "Oh, you suggested hot cocoa. Tickle, tickle, tickle." I am definitely suggesting hot cocoa. Here's why. I don't want to keep you up at night, but hot cocoa is a comfort food. It's a comfort beverage. And whether it is alternative milk or it is dairy, it just helps relax your body. So a cup of tea works excellently. But when we're dealing with littles and teenagers, things like that, nice warm cup of hot cocoa, relaxing atmosphere, it'll knock anybody out. It really will. All right, so the melatonin it affects our sleep-wake cycle, right? So if you're deficient in sleep, then you want to have melatonin. But ultimately, the foods that you want to make sure that you're eating throughout the day to help your melatonin, dark leafy greens, omegas, fatty fish, healthy, balanced diet actually helps melatonin. Your typical, normal, balanced diet. All right, adrenaline. Now we talked about this just a little bit, but adrenaline is actually responsible for happiness and or anxiety and depression. Let me get this right. Adrenaline is anxiety and depression, right? So adrenaline is released. It produces anxiety, which, because your body is now getting tired because of an adrenal response, is now creating depression because you're fatigued. Cycle. The opposite of that is one of my favorites, endorphins. I am always promoting the joy of endorphins. Happy foods help trigger endorphins. Okay? When your endorphins are triggered, it reduces pain. It reduces the impact and the intensity of pain, how it feels to you. The pain is still there. Do not get me wrong. The pain is still there. However, when you release the endorphins, when you feed your body something to trigger a release of endorphins, your pain response decreases. It quiets and soothes pain responders. So, those of you out there with CFS, fibro, arthritis of any kind, RA, osteo, I think there's a third one out now. I can't remember. If you're fighting any sort of illness where your joints and your body just ache, we need to get you on a diet that is packed full of happy foods. And, little known fact, about 5-10 minutes of activity. And it doesn't have to be intense activity, just activity, consistent movement. Up, walking around, dancing, chair dancing. If you're in an office, you can't get out. It releases endorphins. I used to tell people, if you're stressed and like in that moment you feel like you're about to blow your gasket, go for a 5-minute walk. 5 minutes. You could also eat an apple or an orange. Any of those. All right, so those are the top 6. So your thyroid, your cortisol, your oxytocin, your melatonin, adrenaline, and endorphins. Those are the top 6. There are a lot of others that actually impact our mood. Everything that our body goes through, all of the vital functions do impact our mood. The food that we eat can help in managing that by creating homeostasis. You feed the body what it needs, right? Figure out what your body needs through bioindividuality. Feed it what it needs and what you don't get from the foods that you gravitate towards, which ultimately that's the biggest identifier. And then from there, now you can create homeostasis, you can create balance. It happens over time, typically between a 3 to 6 month time frame. And you can impact change in as little as 1 week, you guys. 1 week. Long-term change can happen after 1 week. 3 days breaks a habit. 7 days instills it in your brain. 21 days cements it. It's only 3 weeks. So, look at your hormones. Look at your responses. Let's figure out what is happening, where your emotions are. So one of the ways that you can do that is through activities like the homework from last week. Write down how you're feeling after you eat. Maybe not immediately, but 15, 20 minutes later, an hour later. If you notice that you've eaten something and then about 15, 20 minutes later, you're grumpy as all get out, that means that whatever you ate wasn't what your body needed. Does it mean you eat more? Not necessarily. Usually in that case, what you can do is you can get some exercise in, 5-10 minutes, release the endorphins. It'll help balance it out temporarily. And it's not a long-term solution, but sometimes you just can't go and eat more or drink more or whatever. Liquid is actually a good way of getting those nutrients in. Supplementation. So you guys know my 3 powders, right? Those 3 powders make sure that I'm getting all the micronutrients I need for my day. It's my multivitamin. That's why multivitamins are so powerful. Herbal supplementation as needed. So like we were talking about with like the thyroid issues. If you are having issues with thyroid, you're having issues with fatigue, you need to address stress response, and you need to up your dark leafy greens, you guys. No joke. Add some bananas in there, some apples, and yes, mushrooms. And I'm struggling with the mushrooms because I hate mushrooms. But I did find several years ago, it's, I'll have to put the link in here. It's a mushroom drink, and Robin and I discovered you drink it for like 3 weeks and then you're off for a week, but it gives you the nutrients and the benefits of mushrooms. And mushrooms can actually help reduce pain. They can help balance out your body. They can give you some of the nutritious foods that you're not getting outside of that. All right, so some of the other things that you want to make sure that you're getting in. Cruciferous foods. And we talked about fatty fishes. Citrus, eggs, shellfish, legumes, kiwis, tropical fruits, and turmeric, saffron, garlic, oregano, rosemary, thyme. You know that Mediterranean area? Anything that comes out of that Mediterranean area is helpful. Anything. Yogurt, fermented foods. Fermented foods really help the microbiome in your gut, which if your microbiome is balanced, then it can receive and send signals and send nutrients through your intestine, and brain tells the intestine where to send it. It fuels a healthy process is what it does. And the very last one thing I wanted to mention one more time, dark chocolate. Because, come on, chocolate. What better nutrient than chocolate to make us happy? So if you're really having a crappy ass Eeyore day, go for a 5-10 minute walk. Have a piece of dark chocolate. 1 to 2 ounces a day is actually healthy. And if it's really bad, have a glass of red wine. Resveratrol, really helpful on mood. Really helpful. All right, guys. So that's everything I have for you today. I do have a list of these foods. I'm going to post that up so that you guys have just a quick cheat sheet to be able to use at your disposal. So it'll be up in a JPEG so you can download it to your phone right there. And that being said, we talked about 7 days, 3 days, things like that. For those of you not interested in going full Monty into a 3-month, 6-month program, this week I'm kicking out the month-to-month support. What does that entail? Basically, physical fitness program, dietary tutorials, lessons, based on what is happening within the group. So very much like this, but we're going to do a lot more deep dives. What you are hearing here is pretty baseline. So once we get into a deep dive, what happens is we look at individuals. We look directly at you and we see what's happening. On top of that, I'm also kicking out the 6-week program. This is something that many people have used in the past. We nix inflammation and move on with our lives, all within 6 weeks. So you'll see those come out. And last, certainly not least, we're having a party on Saturday. So 12 to 2, I'm going to pop up live and we'll go into probably a Zoom just because we can play whatever music we want in there and just chit chat, dance a little bit. I don't know, I'll have some fun activities and some games for y'all. Sound like a plan? All right, guys, I will chat with you later. Hopefully this came across okay. I am going to check it once it posts and we'll find out. And if nothing else, I will post up the one that's on my camera. Okay? I'll chat with y'all later. Bye.